Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. In this episode, we will be learning from Francis Ho, Senior Vice President at Samsung Catalyst Fund. Francis, could you take a few minutes to share your story and how you got to where you are today?
Great. Thank you very much, Nicola. Very honored to have the chance to talk to you today. Hopefully share some of our experiences here. Very excited about a couple of our team members receiving the Emerging Leaders and Rising Stars Award from Global Corporate Venturing. Very proud of them. And this morning is especially interesting and fun and exciting for us because one of our portfolio investments, Preventus Solutions, is being acquired by Boston Scientific for $1.2 billion. So exciting event. And we've been partnering with them for several years now. So really amazing to see that the dream that they had from the beginning is becoming a larger and larger reality. With that, maybe I can give a quick intro to Samsung Catalyst Fund and talk a little bit about my personal journey. I have a kind of odd and strange journey, so it should be interesting to discuss. Samsung Catalyst Fund is the corporate VC arm of Samsung, and our mission is to help Samsung to navigate the future by partnering with the top VCs and investing in the best startups in what we call strategic technologies and markets. So for that, we focus on deep tech, which essentially are the foundational technologies such as semiconductors, algorithms, AI, the cloud, sensors, connectivity, wireless. These are the things that makes the bits move and causes the world to go around. The fact that we can talk today is only possible now with the huge amounts of work by all of us in the ecosystem. 10 years ago, not so much. So it's amazing how quickly that's changing. We also invest, though, on the other side, which is the services down the road, because we believe that only by understanding where the services are going, can we understand what will be required from technology, from the deep tech in the next generation. So specifically, we focus on healthcare and life sciences, mobility, fintech, and so on. Let me explain how I got here. I began really in science. I did my undergrad and PhD degrees in physics, undergrad at Caltech, PhD at Stanford, focused on really more practical aspects. Even though it was physics, I was focused on building leading edge instruments to measure very fast, very small things. So for example, my thesis was on this technology called atomic force microscopy. I joined the part of the company that was making test equipment for semiconductors because I was working on instruments. It correlated very well with my expertise. And that was my path to begin on this more business side of my journey. In that time, I've been very fortunate to be part of 3 startups, 2 IPOs, and 1 M&A. So the first startup was called ONI Systems. I learned about optical networking, about telecom industry. This was IPO in NASDAQ 2000. Second startup was called Siloquent. It's a Israeli-based company. I was the first hire in the US. I was the marketing guy trying to get design wins. And I learned how to work with a remote headquarter. And I got into VC because I joined JP Morgan Partners at some point. This is the private equity part of JP Morgan. It's interesting. It's a sort of a corporate VC, but it was purely financially driven, but it had only 1 LP. So it's kind of a hybrid, right? So I learned about VC investments over there. And then I came to Samsung 8 years ago because my prior company, Inphi, my CEO was Young Sohn, an amazing leader in Silicon Valley. Young was asked by Samsung to start a new innovation group in Samsung. And I was his first hire for this. And we came here and our mission was to help Samsung build new businesses by using what we call tools like investment, M&A, innovation, combined under one roof, and use a synergistic method to promote new directions and help Samsung see the future better. So we built out the team over the past 8 years. We founded Samsung Catalyst Fund 8 years ago. we quickly got one of our old partners, Shankar Chandran from JP Morgan, to join us to run the fund. And it's been an amazing 8-year journey. So that's a long and winding story.
And I want to understand, how much of that do you think it's useful in corporate venturing or not? You have a PhD, which means that you went very deep into something that very few people know. How much do you think your PhD is giving you a perspective or a way to look at things that helps you in corporate venturing?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. First of all, I'm focused on the deep tech side, and even when I focus on the services side, many of those things are pretty complex in terms of the underlying principles. For example, medical technologies, right? Life science, biotech. So the kind of VC I do happens to be deeply connected to science. It would not be the case if I were investing in other very interesting topics, let's say pure fintech or social networking and things like that. So if you don't understand what's underneath, you can't see that in advance of the reality coming out by big press releases. So to be early, you have to know the patterns underneath. So that's, I think, the biggest reason to go deeper.
Can you give us an example, a concrete example of value you have added after an investment, not during the due diligence, but actually after the investment, which really helped the startup go into the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is now not about me. This is about us as a team. And let me just say something about that. At Samsung Catalyst Fund, from the very beginning, the senior folks in the team, Shankar, myself, Chris, others, we came from financial VCs before. So we were very aware of how things are traditionally done in different VCs. And we saw the good parts and the bad parts. So even 13 years ago, the cloud was there. The basic technologies like sensors completely there. The AI was not there yet, but the vision was to get that done. So when Samsung showed up as a potential partner, they were very interested because Samsung could be one of the missing links to connect their kind of medical technology into everyday life for consumers. If your company's not strong, there wouldn't be a VC team. So there's some strong industry presence. What is that? And clearly, your partners are coming to you because of that. So you have to take advantage of that. In our case, it was our brand, our wearable devices, our amazing phone products, all those things that you know about for Samsung. So very straightforward vision to think about what to work on together. And happy to say that we've been active on that with this investment. Second, completely different example. One of our investments in a machine learning chip startup, and we made a bunch of machine learning chip investments. And as a result, we know the industry pretty well. We know the customers, the ecosystem. So when we invested in this other new one, we were able to make intros for them into the verticals they were interested in conquering, because these are amazingly smart people about machine learning algorithms, chip design also, and so on. But they were not specialists in whatever, let's say healthcare, right? So we have that. Because of our breadth, we have very strong experts in specifically how to use AI for, let's say, genomics or real world evidence or whatever it is. So we're able to help them with that. This is using our large corporate parents network.
That's very nice. And maybe I'm going to be cheeky here. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Samsung is a huge conglomerate company. And I feel like rather than being a negative, you're turning it into a huge positive. You're looking at everything Samsung could bring to the startups. And so I want to really understand that, because I've talked to other CVCs that feel like because their company is so big, they can't do what they want and so on. But I really feel like you're turning it around into a huge strength. Tell me how you've managed to do that.
Absolutely, it's a strength. I mean, we're very proud and feel very fortunate to be part of Samsung. I'm sitting here only because Samsung has done such an amazing job in its core business, right? Same with you, same with others on this call probably. The size of a company like TDK, Samsung, Intel, and so on, right? It's overwhelmingly positive because the reason that startups want to work with our companies is because they see the possibilities. They see the possibility for their world-changing idea to actually get adopted at a scale that they cannot do by themselves. So our challenge here is to make that a reality. And the negative part that you mentioned would be it's not easy because there's 50 reasons why the big company does not want to change. But there's one reason that they want to change, which is they know that they have to survive. They know they have to do it because they see what happens to the other, I won't say which examples, but very negative examples of those who don't change. In our corporate life, we have lots of things to have to take care of. We are just privileged to be here representing the company to think about where to put its precious hard-earned dollars into the future. Really try to bring that when I talk to the entrepreneurs because we can help them, like we just said.
I think the way to summarize it is Samsung and have been a close partner. They've been my customers for more than a decade. They know disruption is coming and they prepare for it. And I think what you're doing is really about making sure that this disruption is well understood. And so I would like to have a feel about how much of your strategic value is about identifying where disruptions could come from and how much of that is informing Samsung where to go. I want to have a feel of is Samsung Catalyst Fund already impacting many areas in Samsung where the strategy is influenced positively?
That's a great question. I would say that the principal value is about predicting the future better than we can. That's really what it's about. Everything falls from that because our tech world is so difficult to navigate. Things change. And now that tech is a dominating force, we're no longer kind of dependent on bigger forces. We are the big force. We actually cause change. And this makes it even more difficult to predict. So we have to be careful what we do. As a company, how do you do that?
That's very nice. And I will touch on the global aspects because I think that there's a lot of tactical aspects that I think you could share. But I want to really deep dive on what you said about working as a partnership because I feel like you're combining a good corporate culture with good financial VC mindset. Tell us a normal, typical investment decision and how it works as a partnership.
So the key is that we have to have a decision process where our team gets to decide. And it's very similar to the traditional VC process where you bring in ideas, you debate it, you iterate on that via very Socratic dialogue. You ask questions, you challenge each other. You try not to make it personal. You're willing to just look at data and change your views as time evolves. And you look for dissenting views. You look for red flags because those are the things that you really don't want to just pass by without some thought. And you manage that on the flip side to make it practical because you don't want to debate just for debate's sake and go on for weeks and months and do nothing and no one wants to work with you. So it's that kind of process where you iteratively decide, is it worth doing still or not? Is it a really interesting thing we should dig further, or it's pretty cool, but there's these reasons that it's never going to work.
So I'm going to double click on this because there's a very fine line, and maybe it's more art than science, between a team decision and a consensus. And you did say it's not quite consensus, but can you really explain the difference between it's not consensus, but yet it's a team decision?
Yeah. So the way I think of it is that the complicated topic, right, it has so many factors. So first of all, you have to prioritize those factors. So you have some list of the key things for this specific situation, and it's always different. In some cases, it's something about go-to-market, other cases, defensibility, the competition, whatever. So you have a manageable set of the top issues or considerations, positive, negative, that we should think about. The team's job is to make sure that we're not missing anything that's important and to make sure that we answer those questions to the right level. And that's a judgment call by us collectively. as anything can be chased to death way beyond where it's worth. If you get to the point, it means that there's agreement that these are the key questions and these are the answers that we have, which may partially or fully address them. And then at that point, we go into the phase of, okay, let's decide um, what is our gut, and let's talk through that. And then we go around. And by that point, because there's no surprises anymore, we've all kind of made sure that these are the issues. And then we know that there's no perfect answer. There's many reasons to fail. And if you have a perfect deal, you would wait forever.
And depending on the discussions, is that when you start shaping a view about the check size? Are you going to lead, or you prefer to follow? Are you preferring a small check versus a big check? Is that part of that team discussion, or does that come from the person driving the deal, making the proposal?
Oh, that's very much part of the discussion. It comes early on, in fact. So I think it's a mistake to leave the deal dynamics to the end. Often it's one of the most important topics. You think about how much capital the company will need to get to some nice milestone like cash flow break even or something like that. You think about what that means in terms of future rounds and who's around the table and all those things. You don't want to think about it at the end because those are absolute killer items that could make you decide to stop. If it's a small early stage investment, not so much. And it's a very important topic to consider.
So let me challenge a little bit, because it feels like depending on what check size is being proposed at the beginning, it's probably going to influence whether you end up investing or not, which could drive the wrong incentives for some people proposing a smaller check to make sure they have a chance to invest versus not. How do you counterbalance this possibly wrong incentive?
Yeah, so this is very interesting. And I've only worked at really one CVC so far at Samsung, right? My prior experience was really a financial VC. But I know at Samsung, it's interesting because it turns out that the sensitivity of the deal to our check size, meaning the desire from the startup and their board to take our investment and work with us, is only loosely coupled to the check size. And it's because, back to your old question, the real
The
reason
value.
is not the money, it's collaboration with Samsung. So we emphasize the value of working with Samsung and the Samsung Catalyst Fund. And that's independent of the check size. We'll work with you just as hard, right?
Very, very nice. And maybe I will double click on the board. Do you see a difference in terms of learning between being an observer versus being a director?
I think being a director, there's more responsibility. You have fiduciary responsibilities. You would tend to be more caught up in some of the more kind of mechanics of raising a round, hiring and firing, and planning and so on. So that definitely is a difference. And there's a lot of value in that because you get to contribute to the company in very significant ways and get to build strong bonds with the other directors for sure. But other than that, in terms of the interaction with the company, that's actually independent, down to the point where some of our investments, without being either on the board, on the observer, whatever, we have strong relationships with the company. So it's a very good two-way street of value flowing back and forth.
So, without any of the corporate having an influence on your investment decisions, how do you work before investment, during investment, post investment with the BUs? How do you make sure the secret sauce really kicks in?
Yeah, that's a really important and delicate question. Um, First of all, there's the concept of we can make investments independently. Um, that's sort of like a privilege, and you don't want to abuse the privilege, right? It's a privilege in that there are cases when you need to use that, but you don't want to be doing it all the time. That's a bad idea. Why? Because we go back to who's creating the cash flow of the company. It's the BUs. If the BUs think you're useless over many years, it's not a good thing for your CVC team, right? So we should not get confused between the privilege to not have to get support to not caring about support. That would be a big mistake.
I like the way you use the word privilege. I think you need to earn the trust, you need to earn these privileges, and they should be taken away if you abuse them, no doubt.
Yes.
You talk about stakeholders, and I really like that. If you were to pick one, who is your customer? Is that the entrepreneurs, the corporate? How do you see that notion of someone is a customer of the CVC?
Yeah, it's clearly the entrepreneurs. Everything depends on them at the end of the day. So if you had to pick one, which it wouldn't make sense to pick one, of course, but if you had to pick one for argument's sake, it's the entrepreneur. They make the magic happen.
I'm going to ask a more tactical, but I think it's useful for CVCs that are looking to grow in more geographies. You're one of the CVCs that has many presence in many places. So maybe at very high level, how do you choose a location? And what would you say when you recruit locally are the pitfalls or the things to really watch out for?
We began in Silicon Valley. The core team that began were just longtime Silicon Valley folks from many other companies outside of Samsung. Um, very quickly, we expanded to Israel because we all know it's Startup Nation. It's one of the best places on the planet for startups. Samsung already had a strong presence in Israel, so it's very easy for us to do that. So we quickly added our presence there. Um, Korea was there from the very beginning because it's a corporate headquarters. So there's certain critical functions there that we've had from the beginning. And then we expanded to the East Coast of the US because it's obvious, again, it's needed. Many things happening up and down the coast, including Canada. And then in Europe, what happened about maybe 5 years ago, right? There was this market shift in the culture and the openness and the excitement. So Silicon Valley, I think, is still the best place you have to compare, but it's no longer anywhere close to being the only place, not even close. So many amazing things coming out from these countries up and down the world. So it was obvious whenever we had to go to the next place where that should be. Um, and then your other question was, what are the pitfalls or?
Pitfalls in recruiting in a new place you haven't been yet.
VC investment is very local. Uh, there's no such thing as you can do it by parachuting in and visiting occasionally, but it's not that effective compared to a committed person who's there to build a long-term relationship. So finding that person who is very well connected locally, yet shares the vision that we have, shares our culture, shares our desire to work closely to help Samsung. Those are the things that are probably pitfalls because you can easily optimize for one but not the other things. So the challenge is always for all of us in our recruiting process to identify. I don't think we have the answer to that, but we just keep this in mind as we search for that person.
That makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned about a committed person, but do you think one person alone in a location is right? Or do you think there is a critical mass you need to have in a new location?
Yeah, that's a good question. The tension always is if you people too quickly, it's harder to integrate. You kind of balkanize, I think, because there's no set culture. One thing we know from CVC is how something is failing all the time. There's so many servers, right? In a large company, there's so many components. Something is changing every single month, every single year. So one thing we have to be careful about in CVC is we have to be flexible. So how to be flexible in terms of building out your footprint with offices, anticipating that things can change, which are outside of your control. So you think about that, and again, I don't think I have a good answer, but it probably depends on the region the person is in, how homogeneous it is, how easy it is to connect across that, the person you have as a candidate, how comfortable they are, let's say languages or something like that, or culture, and their ability to travel. All those things are key considerations. But ideally, I think it would be nice to have at least two people per site if you can do it. But in reality, it's often difficult to ensure that.
Very nice, very practical. So my last question is, what do you look forward the most for 2021?
We've had an incredible first few weeks in the United States. Huge ups and downs. Yesterday was very energizing for us Americans, and the stock market liked it. I think it was the highest upswing on record for inauguration. We have amazing people in charge at the very top thinking about science, technology, and truth. So I'm very happy to see that. I'm very bullish about where we're going from. The pandemic is very challenging. We keep learning about the things that we did not know, such as new variants, immunity escape, those kind of things. So a lot of work ahead of us. Again, we are fortunate to be looking at the new things. So in a sense, the more there are challenges, the more there is for us to do. So super excited from that perspective in terms of investment.
Thank you, Francis. I think that was really an amazing interview. I'm not surprised you're the top 5 in the power list of global corporate venturing. It was really amazing. A lot of golden nuggets, and I think this is really good. Thank you so much, Francis. I think we learned a lot today.
Thank you so much, Nicola. Great to talk to you.